happens to be a mother. And welcome to another series of monthly program meetings sponsored by Woods and Wetlands, a group of the Illinois Sierra Club. My name is Linda Tilton, and I will be your host this evening here in my kitchen. These monthly program meetings feature speakers on a variety of topics relating to the environment, stewardship, wildlife, nature, public policy, and anything that relates to outdoor activities like hiking and canoeing. All our online meetings are free and open to the public, but we do require you to register through our website. And you will find us every second Sunday of the month online with another offering. In a minute, we're going to hear from Tamara Arenovich of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, but I have a few brief announcements first. As Doug said, we're recording this so you can watch it later. I will send you an email next week sometime, and you can go to YouTube and watch it again and enjoy it again. Please make sure you are muted. We don't want to hear barking dogs other than Tamara's, and television or any kind of commotion. Finally, before I say anything else, if you have any questions during the talk, there is a chat box at the bottom of your screen. I think you'll see it down there, and type your questions in. And our dear friend Rosemary is going to sort the questions out, and then she will ask them when Tamara is finished. After Tamara speaks, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some upcoming programs we have. Now let's move on to the main event. Tamara Arenovich. No, I had a student named Arenovich. This is Arenovich, is a media and communication specialist. She holds advanced degrees in statistics and studied global journalism at the Monk School of Global Arts and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. Driven by social responsibility and a love for the ocean, Tamara transitioned into environmental conservation, and you won't believe this, after a lengthy career in healthcare and academia. She has served on the front lines of 10 Sea Shepherd campaigns, and I'm going to let her tell you about the Sea Shepherds. But her campaigns were, first of all, in Mexico. She stood shoulder to shoulder with courageous and passionate activists working tirelessly to protect the world's most endangered marine mammal, the vaquita porpoise. In Canada, she participated in Sea Shepherd's Operation Virus Hunter campaign with the First Nations in their fight to protect wild salmon and coastal ecosystems from the devastating impacts of salmon farming. In the Caribbean, she documented and supported Sea Shepherd's response to climate crisis, aiding hurricane survivors. In Costa Rica, she monitored critical nesting beaches for endangered sea turtles, ensuring the safety of the mother turtles, hatchlings, and eggs. In Japan, she witnessed the bloody massacre of migrating pods of dolphins in Taji's notorious cove, an annual hunt fueled both by profit and social and environmental consequences of overfishing. Tamara's activism was most recently featured in the Netflix documentary Seas Piracy. And with that, let me introduce and please help me welcome Tamara.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you, everybody. My name is Tamara, and it's really great to be here with you this evening. And thank you so much for being here this evening, Mother's Day, and taking the time out of your weekend to be here. It's very much appreciated. And thank you, Sierra Club, for the invitation to speak today. So I'm here with you today representing Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. I don't know if everybody in the audience is familiar with our organization. Many people are familiar with us through the television series Whale Wars that used to run on TV that documented our efforts to stop illegal whaling in the Southern Ocean. Sea Shepherd has been around for a very, very long time, actually since 1977. And there's so much that we're involved in beyond, protecting the whales in the Southern Ocean. So I look forward to speaking with you this evening and telling you a little bit about some of the work that we're doing all around the world and our current initiatives to protect the world's oceans and all of their inhabitants. And I look forward to telling you why protecting the oceans is so critically important, not just on an environmental level, but it's really important to the survival of every one of us, to you, to me, and to all of us on this planet. So before we begin, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. It was a very lovely welcome that Linda provided, and it's all true. But as she mentioned, I wasn't always a frontlines activist. I once used to live a very normal existence. I worked in healthcare and academia for many years, but I've always been passionate about the ocean. I'm an avid scuba diver and free diver, and I still remember the first time I ever went beneath the waves on my first scuba diving trip. And it was an almost surreal experience to just actually experience the transition from the normal everyday sights of land, the types of things you see when you're on vacation, like resorts, beaches, tourists, the waves, the beach, and actually experiencing that transition under the waves and seeing the coral, the fish, the marine wildlife, an abundance of life and mystery. Logically, I always knew it was there, but to experience that on an emotional level just had a profound impact on me. And to understand that this world exists, it coexists with us, and it's right there, it was really just kind of a remarkable experience. And then moving on from there, just some of the incredible close encounters that I've had with marine wildlife, I just felt a sense of connection and also a sense of responsibility and, and the need to do a little bit more. But so fast forward from there, I guess a few years later, I was working in my old career, and I was living in Toronto, Canada. And on a freezing cold day in February, I remember this well, and it was actually Valentine's Day. I happened to be in the heart of the city walking around, and I came across a group of demonstrators who were standing there in the icy cold February afternoon, demonstrating in front of the Japanese embassy. And I was curious, so I went to go see what was going on. And it turns out that this was my local Sea Shepherd chapter. So these are local volunteers who raise awareness about, the issues that are facing the oceans around the world, and also do outreach in the local communities. So I spoke with them, and I learned that for 6 months out of the year, every year, migrating pods of dolphins are systematically targeted and driven into a tiny cove in Japan, where they are systematically and ruthlessly slaughtered. This is Taiji. If you've seen the cove, it's a very gripping and shocking documentary that chronicles this practice. The water runs red with their blood. It's horrible. And this is a practice that's not driven by culture or food insecurity, but it's actually motivated by high profit margins and the captivity industry. So they slaughter these dolphins. Essentially, they keep the juveniles, and the juveniles are sold into a life of captivity after watching their families die. So it's pretty horrible stuff, and it was shocking. It shocked me. It ultimately led me to volunteer with my local Sea Shepherd chapter in Toronto And from there, I decided that I needed to do more, and I needed to understand, like, why is this happening? How is this happening? And I needed to do something about it, which ultimately began me on my journey where I decided to volunteer on campaign with Sea Shepherd. So I did end up heading to Japan, to that notorious cove, witnessing those atrocities firsthand. And my experiences there in the cove actually did end up in the documentary Conspiracy, which is on Netflix. So if you haven't had the chance to check out that documentary, it's on Netflix. It's about a year old now, and it is pretty gripping. So I went to Japan. And I experienced that. I still felt that I saw, for better or for worse, around the world, for my to be further involved. And so from there, that ultimately led me to a number of locations around the world, as Linda had front lines of 10 Sea Shepherd campaigns on the ships and on the shores over the years, and also behind the scenes in a supportive role, and countless more. And so why? I guess the question is why? Why would I do that? I ultimately ended up leaving my career in healthcare and academia. And now my life is pretty much devoted to protecting the oceans and all of their inhabitants. It's a big shift. It's a pretty radical shift. I don't regret it for a second, but I suppose the question I get asked sometimes is why. The second question I get asked is, how can I do that? And we'll get around to that later in the talk. But to illustrate why that matters, I guess it might help to start with a short video that will introduce you to the bigger picture. Doug, if you're so kind, perhaps you could share your screen and cue up the first video.
There we go. There we go.
Friends would walk up to me and just be like, "What the f is in your mug?" And I would just tell them.
So we call this planet Earth, but it really is planet Ocean. Over 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. Now, if you take a breath and exhale, let's all take one more breath and exhale. One of those two breaths came to you directly from the ocean. The ocean provides 50 to 80% of the oxygen that we breathe. So the ocean is life. It's essential for our survival and for the survival of all the species that we share this planet with. But our ocean is in trouble. And as Captain Paul Watson, the founder of Sea Shepherd, says, if the ocean dies, we die. So this is really more than a conceptual fight between right and wrong. Protecting the ocean is truly a matter of our own survival and the survival of every species on this planet. And the issue is actually much bigger than the ocean, isn't it? Our entire planet is struggling these days and is in trouble. Wildfires, hurricanes, extreme weather incidents are becoming more and more common in the news as climate change escalates and impacts the lives of people all around the world. And we can't really talk about and address climate change without talking about the ocean and addressing the issues facing the ocean. The ocean plays a critically important role in the fight against climate change. So greenhouse gas emissions are a major contributor to climate change, and carbon dioxide is the primary greenhouse gas emitted by human activity. Reducing the size of this carbon footprint is critical to meeting global emission targets and mitigating the impacts of climate change. Now, 27% of all carbon emitted is captured by the ocean. The ocean floor is the largest pool of organic carbon on the planet, and it acts as a reservoir for long-term carbon storage. It absorbs approximately 10 million tons of carbon dioxide every year, and it plays a central role in mitigating climate change. Not only does the ocean act as a carbon sink, but healthy populations of seafloor organisms are critical for fixing carbon dioxide. Corals, for example, transform inorganic carbon, like carbon dioxide, into organic carbon. And marine sediments store over 2,000 gigatons of carbon in their top 1 meter, which is almost twice as much as terrestrial soil. But this carbon storage is interrupted by bottom trawling. And recent research indicates that bottom trawling is responsible for releasing between 0.6 and 1.5 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year from the seabed, which is equivalent to the emissions of the entire aviation industry. And in addition to that, marine megafauna like whales, whale sharks, and rays, they also sequester carbon and reduce the impacts of climate change. A whale, for example, can sequester up to 33 tons of carbon dioxide in its lifetime. And not only that, but whales transport nutrients throughout the water column, and their excrement stimulates the production of phytoplankton. Phytoplankton capture about 37 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide and contribute at least 50% of the oxygen we breathe. So one of those two breaths we all took collectively together comes to you courtesy of those phytoplankton. So by protecting marine megafauna and working with governments to stop illegal fishing and overfishing and damaging industrial fishing practices, the work that we do here at Sea Shepherd Conservation Society is directly contributing to efforts to mitigate the effects of climate change. Which brings us to what we're here to talk about today, which is Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. Sea Shepherd is an international, nonprofit, volunteer-driven ocean conservation organization. It was established in 1977 by Captain Paul Watson, who is also one of the founding members of Greenpeace. And it's not an overstatement to say that Captain Watson is absolutely one of the pioneers of the modern day environmental movement. He left Greenpeace and founded Sea Shepherd in 1977, wanting to take a more direct approach to tackling the biggest threats facing the ocean and all marine life around the world. And I don't know, many of you might have had the privilege of hearing Captain Watson speak over the years, or anybody who's seen footage of our early campaigns. It's fairly clear that Sea Shepherd's approach to marine conservation is direct and somewhat unique. Now, in the past, we had a bit of a reputation as outlaws, as pirates, as vigilantes of the sea that were fighting for whales. And indeed, I mean, our logo is a Jolly Roger, so that might be warranted. But while that may hold true for years past, because at the time, it was the most effective means to bring forth true and impactful change, that's not the case anymore today. From our small, grassroots, and somewhat rebellious beginnings, Sea Shepherd has evolved into something much, much larger. And we're no longer just an ocean conservation organization. Sea Shepherd is truly a global movement. Today, we have chapters in over 20 countries all around the world, and the scope of the issues that we take on truly do cover all of the world's oceans. We have a fleet of 9 ships. I think actually it might be 10 now, I'm not sure, and it is still growing. These are all located in key areas around the world, taking on the most pressing issues facing marine wildlife and marine ecosystems. So unlike those early days, today, instead of in the high seas, we truly can have the greatest impact by tackling the biggest issue facing the ocean, which is illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Sometimes that's abbreviated to IUU fishing, so I may say that, but I generally dislike acronyms. So it is a mouthful, but I'll probably say it. I think it describes clearly what I mean, which is illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. So these nefarious actions kill an absolutely staggering amount of wildlife, including threatened and endangered species, and they destroy critical habitats and ecosystems. Now, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing often takes place in national waters all around the world. Now, laws do often exist to protect these waters, but in many nations, particularly in developing nations, the governments lack the resources to fully enforce these laws. And this is where Sea Shepherd steps in. We have a fleet, we have a very unique set of experience that allows us to work with governments to help them to enforce the existing laws that are in place to protect marine ecosystems and marine wildlife. Sea Shepherd's mission is to defend marine wildlife and protect the world's oceans from illegal exploitation and environmental destruction. Sea Shepherd partners with governments around the world to stop illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in national waters. And we also collaborate with conservation researchers, contributing to the scientific knowledge needed to shape policy and enhance protections for all marine wildlife. At present, Sea Shepherd works collaboratively with governments in Liberia, Namibia, Sao Tome and Principe, the Gambia, Benin, Gabon, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Mexico, Peru, and Panama. And I can tell you that discussions are underway to establish additional government partnerships as well, enhancing these nations' ability to defend their national waters against the threat of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. And to give you a sense of why we focus on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing as a priority area, let me give you an example. So in 2017, excuse me, Sea Shepherd, in partnership with the Liberian Ministry of National Defense, boarded a notorious fishing vessel called the Libico II. This vessel was internationally blacklisted on 3 different lists. Now, the Libico II was licensed to fish using longline fishing gear. But when officials boarded the vessel after we discovered it, they discovered that it was actually deploying gill nets, which is a far more destructive method of fishing that's responsible for an absolutely shocking amount of bycatch. Now, bycatch is the capture and kill of non-target species, and it can include everything from sea turtles to whales to dolphins, seabirds, sharks, and so on. Now, when officials boarded the Libico II, they discovered that it was illegally fishing for sharks to produce shark liver oil. You can only imagine how many sharks it takes to produce even the tiniest amount of shark liver oil. It's estimated that this vessel, just this one ship alone, was responsible for killing 500,000 sharks a year. Now, sharks, of course, have often got a bad reputation in the media. You know, Jaws didn't really do sharks any favors. People sort of see them as mindless killing machines, but they're not. They're animals. They are apex predators. And as apex predators, they play an absolutely critical role in managing the balance of the delicate marine ecosystems, right? Apex predators keep the rest of the ecosystem healthy. They take out sick animals, injured animals. They keep the populations of mesopredators under control. If we remove all of the sharks, we've suddenly got an overabundance in the middle of the food chain which in turn will overconsume the bottom of the food chain, which just spins us all into chaos. Everything I was talking about earlier about the importance of the seabed, the floor, and the coral in protecting, in acting as a carbon sink. All of that goes out of order when we take out the apex predators. So sharks are critically important to the survival and well-being of the oceans. And this one ship, the Libico 2, was illegally killing 500,000 sharks per year. Now, with the support of Sea Shepherd, Liberian officials arrested the vessel for all of these violations, and to date, it has not returned to sea. So that was in 2017. 5 years later, that ship is still not out at sea. So just by stopping that one illegal fishing vessel, we've directly saved the lives of 2.5 million sharks. And that's just one ship. So this gives you a sense of the scope of the potential, first of all, of the magnitude of the problem and of the potential that there is to really, truly have a positive impact for the oceans and for marine wildlife by taking on the issue of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. By doing so, we're able to save an incredible amount of wildlife, often endangered species. So let's talk about a few of our initiatives. I'll try to go relatively quickly because I see that I'm probably talking a little bit too long here, but let's talk about Operation Milagro. So Milagro is Spanish for miracle. This is a long-standing campaign that Sea Shepherd has. It's been running since 2015. And this is our effort in northern Mexico to protect the most endangered marine mammal in the world, which is the vaquita porpoise. The vaquita is critically endangered. It's the most recent population estimate, which is based on a study that took place and was published in 2019, estimates that somewhere between 6 and 19 vaquitas are left in the world, in the entire world. This is the most endangered marine mammal on the planet. And it's endemic to a very small region in the upper Gulf of California on Mexico's west coast. So it's super cute. If time permits, I'll show you a quick video about the vaquita, but you can certainly Google it on your own. It's a porpoise. It's a very small porpoise, and it's really cute. It's kind of got black patches around its eyes and its mouth, and it looks a lot like a panda. And indeed, people do refer to it as the panda of the sea. And unfortunately, it is facing imminent extinction, and there's a very real chance that we could lose this animal within our lifetimes. Not only within our lifetimes, within the next couple of years, truly. The primary threat to the vaquita, in fact, the only documented threat to the vaquita, the reason the population is on the brink of extinction is because of entanglement in illegal fishing gear. So specifically gill nets. Now, gill nets are these same nets that I just mentioned when we were talking about the Libico 2. Here they are again. Gill nets are long rectangular nets that are placed under the water. They're fixed at each end with an anchor and an anchor line. So they're big, long rectangles. They can span hundreds or even thousands of feet in length. And these nets are incredibly deadly because they are non-selective. So anything that swims through these nets can get caught and killed in its mesh, which is really, it becomes invisible underwater. Dolphins, sharks, whales, turtles, sea lions, seabirds, rays, and unfortunately, the vaquita get tangled in these nets. Now, the poachers that are placing these nets in the vaquita's habitat are not actually trying to kill the vaquita. The vaquita is sadly an accidental casualty, bycatch, of a very lucrative illegal business. So poachers set these nets in the area to catch totoaba, which is another endemic species that is basically a very large type of sea bass. And totoaba swim bladders are prized on the Chinese black market for unsubstantiated medicinal purposes, kind of like rhino horn and that sort of thing. Poachers set these nets in an effort to catch spawning groups of totoabas, and then they cut the swim bladders out of these totoabas, often while they're still alive, discarding the remainder of the fish at sea and taking only the bladders. Now, totoabas are a type of sea bass. They are very large. They can be over 6 feet in length. I think it's important to make the distinction and note that these poachers are not local, legal, artisanal fishers. No self-respecting fisherman would like kill an entire like a spawning group at sea. This is not people that are trying to feed their families. Quite the opposite. These are criminals, and they often have ties to the cartel. So the swim bladders of the totoaba are often referred to as the cocaine of the sea because of the astronomical price that they fetch on the black market. And so, of course, where there's big money, there's organized crime. And so these poachers that are setting these nets in the Vaquita refuge, which is what's responsible for the decline of the species, excuse me, they're not only killing the vaquita, which is the most endangered marine mammal in the world, an animal currently on the brink of extinction. They're not only harming all of the incidental bycatch that these nets affect, whales, dolphins, sharks, and so on. And they're not only like destroying an ecosystem so rich and biodiverse that Jacques Cousteau once referred to it as the world's aquarium, but they're also harming local communities and impacting the livelihood of legal artisanal fishers and bringing an element of organized crime to an otherwise tranquil, small, and family-oriented fishing village. I don't know if any of you have seen the documentary Sea of Shadows that was out a few years ago. I believe it's on Nat Geo, and it might also be available on Amazon Prime, but not 100% sure. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend that you check it out. It details the almost unbelievable story of all of this, the plight of the vaquita and efforts to conserve it, and all of the opposing forces that are out there just trying to make some quick money at the expense of the environment and endangered species. It also chronicled Sea Shepherd's efforts to protect this species. We've been out there since 2015. When we started this campaign, we sent our sailboat, the Martin Sheen, and it was an effort to almost just prove that the seemingly mythological creature does in fact exist and capture footage of it. The people that were opposing the conservation efforts were saying, why bother? It's already extinct. We verified that it is not extinct. It is very much still there, and it is very much worth fighting for. So from there, Operation Milagro evolved for several years. You may have seen footage of this, but we were out there directly removing the illegal gill nets that were responsible for the decline of this species. Over the years, Sea Shepherd has removed over 1,000 illegal gill nets from the Vaquita Refuge, which is a UNESCO certified and federally protected region. We've directly saved the lives of over 4,000 animals and indirectly saved the lives of countless more by ensuring that those nets never find their way back into the sea. Some would say that without our efforts there, the vaquita would likely already be extinct, and I do believe that to be the case. Now, in recent years, Operation Milagro has evolved one step further. Sea Shepherd has a great relationship with the government of Mexico, and we work very closely these days with the Mexican Navy. Our role is more of one of deterrence and detection. So we keep an eye out. Our ships are out there. We've got 2 ships monitoring the Vaquita Refuge, looking for any signs of illegal activity and potential poaching. As soon as we see anything suspect, the Navy swoops in and puts a stop to it. So we're actually at a stage now where more often than not, where those nets are not even finding their way into the ocean, and we're preventing them from ever entering the ecosystem. So this is great news for the vaquita. The vaquita is still out there. It's still alive. There is still hope. This is a campaign that's near and dear to my heart. I've been out there on the front lines for many, many years. I'm one of the few people in the world who's actually seen a vaquita with my own eyes. I've seen several. Unfortunately, the ones that I've seen were not alive. They were dead in illegal gill nets, but they are still out there. As recently as this past fall, Sea Shepherd works with world-leading vaquita researchers, and we set forth on a vaquita sighting expedition to visually sight the vaquitas. This is important, of course, to ensure that they're still there. The scientists are absolutely trained for this. They're also brilliant at detecting the acoustics associated with vaquitas. To the untrained ear, a vaquita sounds just like a series of clicks. That's what it sounds like to me, but But of course, these are world experts that know exactly what they're looking for and exactly what they're listening for. They have highly specialized and sophisticated equipment that allows them to establish the presence, the health, the location of the remaining vaquita population. What I can tell you is in our most recent survey that went out, which was last fall, the experts did cite between 6 and 8 adult vaquitas and between 1 and 2 calves. So they are still out there, they're healthy, they're viable, they're breeding. The only thing that stands in the way from this species recovering is entanglement in these illegal gill nets, and that's what we're there fighting for, and we will continue to fight for this species. Another thing that just happened a couple of days ago, actually, a big article just came out in the scientific journal Science from the vaquita researchers that what they announced scientifically is that genetically, the vaquita population is completely viable and healthy. So one of the concerns that people have is, you know, if there's as few, like less than 20 animals left, can they even breed? Are they going to be healthy? And the answer to that question from a scientific perspective is yes. So fortunately for the vaquita, it's always had a very small population, albeit not as small as it is right now. It used to be a few thousand and a few hundred. But the good news about this genetically is that all of the recessive mutations that potentially could cause problems with most species with inbreeding have long been eliminated in vaquitas. So they are able to happily and healthily reproduce. The scientists noted that if the illegal fishing stops in the area, this species actually can recover. The only threat to its survival right now is entanglement in illegal fishing gear. So, and that's from a scientific perspective as well, too, which just reinforces our commitment to get out there and ensure that those nets never find their way into the water. So I had a little video for that, but I see we are running a little short on time. So shall I keep going and talk about a few of our other efforts?
Please keep going,
okay.
please.
Okay, another thing that I can tell you that we're working on the topic of cute cetaceans in the world, Sea Shepherd Brazil, which is our Brazilian chapter, just returned from the second round of an ongoing scientific collaboration that they have to protect the river dolphins of the Amazon. And so this is really remarkable. There's several species of freshwater dolphins within the Amazon River that are endemic to the area. Unfortunately, they also are threatened right now because of illegal fishing. So in the Amazon, these people actually are fishing for these dolphins, not to eat them, but the dolphins are used as bait to fish for a type of fish that's endemic to the area. And dolphin meat is apparently quite fatty and is illegally being used as bait there. So Sea Shepherd Brazil is working hard on this initiative, working with scientists to kind of, you know, get a sense of the scope of the problem, to identify and, you know, visually cite the populations. There's two specific types of river dolphins that are of interest to them, the Chukotsi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and the pink river dolphin. The pink river dolphin is a really interesting looking creature. They are actually pink, and apparently they blush when they get excited and they turn into an even deeper shade of pink. So remarkable animals that can only be found in the Amazon and are absolutely worth conserving. So Sea Shepherd is working with scientists there to develop conservation measures to continue to protect these animals. And they are also working with local Indigenous communities, providing education about conservation, and also assisting with proper waste management strategies to help ensure the health and well-being of the Amazon and all of the animals that call this absolutely critical ecosystem their home. So how are we doing for time? Should we end it here and open it up to questions, Linda, Doug?
It's up to you. It's up to you. If you want to, if you have a few more things to share, and then we can do questions, or be sure to give us a way that we can support you and your wonderful organization, please.
Okay, actually, I will do that. So yeah, we'll open up the floor to questions shortly, and I'm hoping I can answer all of them for you. if you want to hear more, I really just scratched the surface today, but I'm glad that we had at least a little bit of time together to read about all of our initiatives around the world. Please head over to Sea Shepherd Campaigns and how you can get involved. Every one of us has the ability to make a difference. You know, we all have a vested interest in protecting this amazing planet that we call our home. You know, I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to head out there onto the ships, you know, and see and contribute directly, you know, on the front lines. But there are so many other ways that you can help. And, you know, and Sea Shepherd is a nonprofit, volunteer-driven organization. We rely entirely on donations to keep our fleet at sea and to continue fighting for our clients, which are, you know, which is the marine wildlife around the world. So head over to seashepherd.org. You can find out about our most recent initiatives. You can also find out how you can get involved if you're interested in volunteering with Sea Shepherd, either crewing on our ships. There's the opportunity to apply for that there. I recognize that not everybody can get away for months at a time and go on a crazy adventure, but we also do have a number of local chapters as well too. We're also talk within your local communities about the ocean and about the work that we're doing. So you can find out about becoming an onshore volunteer with your local chapter. I know that they'd absolutely love to have some additional representation from passionate people like yourselves who are committed to protecting the planet. Again, if you're able to make a small donation, it's always greatly appreciated. That information is available on our website as well too. You can also support us by following us on social media. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on all the social medias, and we usually provide the most recent updates on our active campaigns on those channels. So please feel free to give us a like and a follow. I'm happy to pass all of these links on afterwards if you'd like to share them collectively amongst yourselves. And I think that's all I have to say, but thank you everybody for indulging me. And I hope that you found this talk informative. Thank you again for taking the time out of your weekend, out of your evening, out of your Mother's Day to be here with us today. It is truly appreciated. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, we want to thank you for your compassionate dedication and for taking time for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary, who is our partner. And take it away, Rosemary.
All right, thank you. This was really eye-opening, Tamara. So Tom wants to know what exactly is bottom trawling? Because you said that it stirs up the carbon, which is then released. What's the mechanism?
That's a horrible fishing practice where basically like a large mechanism is lowered into the ocean itself, and they just kind of scoop the bottom, you know, whatever fish, whatever marine life can be found there. It's absolutely destructive, as you can imagine. This is you know, it's kind of just taking a giant bite out of the bottom of the ocean. And the ocean floor, of course, is critical for all an ecosystem, and it's home to probably, if not the most destructive method of fishing, certainly one of the most destructive methods of fishing that's out there.
And so you mentioned, so he was wondering how that affects the environment. So it releases all the carbon that's sequestered there?
Correct, it does that, but it also destroys all of the all of the marine life that's down there, you know, rips apart coral beds. Coral, of course, is struggling, as we all know, you know, with bleaching events and stuff like this. So everything that is, you can imagine, just kind of taking a giant like construction scoop out of a forest or something like that. It's just ripping up the entire bed and all the delicate marine life that's down there, plant and animal.
Thank you. Linda wants to know, you mentioned several countries that you work with. How about the United States? Are there any United States waters that you're active in, and is the United States cooperative?
The United States is cooperative. I'd say our relationship right now is largely outreach. We've got amazing volunteers all throughout the United States who are raising awareness about both local issues in their respective communities and also, you know, the global issues that Sea Shepherd is addressing. We don't have an active partnership with the United States government, but that's not to say that that isn't a possibility in the future.
Thank you. And then Chris wanted to know, what is the prognosis for the recovery of the Georges Bank fisheries? Do you know about that?
I do not know a lot about that specific
Right.
issue.
Chris, did you want to say something about Georges Bank?
Unmute. Yeah, in the 19th and early 20th century, cod was just overfished like crazy. And I just finished a book about oceans, and I can't remember the title, but the author was fairly pessimistic about, you know, if the fisheries are recovering, it's very slow to recover, that they were so overfished that there does not seem to be enough of a base for a rapid regeneration, even though the US and Canada have put in pretty strict restrictions on fishing.
Where is Georges Bank, Chris?
Off of Newfoundland and New England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough. Without having an in-depth knowledge of it, I can't comment on that specific fishery. But I guess there's a few lessons learned here. The first is, like, once they're gone, they're gone. You know, the ocean does have a remarkable ability to heal and to recover when we protect it and when we let it breathe and recover. But, you know, there's so many species that we're losing right now because when they're gone, they can't recover. So I can't comment specifically on that issue, but it does speak to the importance of proper fisheries management and also the establishment of marine protected areas, which is another key a key area that we're focused on that I didn't get the chance to speak about a lot today. But you know, the ocean at large can recover by protecting its most prolific and biodiverse areas. There are a number of marine protected areas in place, but again, many species that use these areas are migratory by nature. And so more needs to be done to ensure that these animals are protected throughout their migratory journeys and throughout their life cycles in order to truly have the impact that they're intended to have.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. It seems like you're frequently dealing with poachers and criminals of all sorts. That sounds very dangerous. Do you have like a little army and weapons, or do you have protection from the countries? I'm terrified. Just
yeah, it can get interesting out there at times. I'll say that much. It's we are not armed, so none of our vessels, we don't carry weapons. We've kind of learned, I can tell you on Milagro, having been out there for a number of years, it got pretty crazy there for a while. You know, it was not uncommon. Our ships have been attacked many times. Poachers have shot at us. They've shot at me. They've thrown Molotov cocktails at our ships. We've been set on fire. We've been illegally boarded. These guys are not playing games. You know, there's big money at stake here. So our ships do have some defense mechanisms in place. Like I said, we are not armed. We're not actively shooting at anybody, but we have kind of learned that we need to be able to defend ourselves. One thing that I will say in Mexico is an advantage that we have is speed. So our ships, our fleet consists of a variety of different types of ships, but the ones that are predominantly in the Vaquita Refuge are former US Coast Guard cutters. So these are, you know, rescue ships that can go very, very fast. And we have some excellent captains that are really good at defensive maneuvering and just making sure that our volunteers and our crew are safe out there.
Wow, it sounds pretty scary. Tom, I wanted to know, have you addressed any issues in the Great Lakes? Anything in freshwater?
We do not have any active campaigns in the Great Lakes right now. Our campaigns are really focusing on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the world's oceans. but that's not to certainly there is the potential to look into those issues further as we continue to grow and expand.
Okay. And then one of our attendees, Kathy Hayes, just a comment. She says, I've listened to a podcast with Paul Watson, the founder of Sea Shepherd, and he's quite impressive, as is the organization. So there's a good review there for which it sounds like it's wonderful, and you are as well. I'm really astonished at all of you for really your devotion to this, to all of our lives and our planet. So
thank you.
Those are all the questions that I see in the chat there.
I know that my brother, who butted on earlier, had a question about the blue fishery. The blues used to run in great runs up and down the East Coast, and they caught giant fish. I've seen it happen because I'm really old. Do you know anything about that now?
Are we just not seeing them? Are they gone? Are they?
Yeah,
depleted?
they see Andy. He's probably gone to sleep. But they're, I think they're seeing them, but they're small.
I'm here.
Oh,
No.
I thought you went to sleep. You're pretty old.
Yeah, not as old as you. No, I think, one of the problems with the blue fisheries is that the commercial fishermen and the charter fishermen are catching all the small blues. And especially in the state of North Carolina, Virginia, and I've been on the top of the North Carolina fisheries department for the last 5 years, telling them that they need to have somebody there when the boats come in and they bring all these tiny bluefish in, and do something to stop it, because if you take all the little fish, nothing grows up.
That's right.
It's pretty simple. And
right.
Same thing goes with the commercial fishermen all along the East Coast catching the flounder. And if you're a commercial fisherman on the East Coast, you can catch anything you want, but yet they turn around and the local guy who wants to catch one flounder for his dinner, there's no flounder to catch, and he's regulated by the size of the flounder he can keep. But the commercial guys are not regulated at all about what they can catch, much like what's going on with that you spoke of in Mexico. These
Unregulated fishing. That's right.
Yeah, and it's terrible. You see these guys come in with just trash cans full of blues that, and the guys from Texas come in, go fishing, and so they're going to catch fish. So they come in with a trash can full of bluefish that are 10 inches or 12 inches long, where these fish will grow to be 30 inches and 35 inches if they're allowed to. But you can't, you used to be able to go out to the shore and catch a 36-inch bluefish. You can't anymore. They're gone. The big ones are gone.
Andy, so there are no regulations, evidently. So that's an area for activism on your part, I would suggest.
Well, and it has been. I almost got thrown out of the Oregon Inlet Marina because I was jawbone at one of the captains that brought in a bucket load of little blues. It's like, it's ridiculous. It has to do educate. You've got to educate these people.
Yes.
It also speaks to the importance and the power that we have as consumers as well too. It's a good point that, that if you purchase a fish, even in a supermarket, there's absolutely no guarantee that that fish doesn't come from illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing.
Well, that's especially the case with swordfish, which, as everybody remembers,
the whole supply chain is like shrouded.
The Perfect Storm movie was about the longliners catching swordfish.
Well, Andy, we're gonna let Linda and Tom close us out now. All right. Okay.
Andy has to get a mission and get going. We would like to thank you very much, Tamara, for your wonderful work, especially the work you do, and for taking time to speak with us. We are very grateful. And I do need some addresses from you, please. when you
Truly my
get
pleasure.
This program has been another in a series of popular family-oriented events that explores environmental history and challenges of the land we call home. The monthly programs are sponsored by our local Woods and Wetlands group here in Lake County and the environs. Next month, we are delighted to welcome the Alliance for the Great Lakes, which also grew out of that period of time, the 1970s, where so much happened to try to move us forward in protecting this planet. What are the issues impacting the Great Lakes, and how does the Alliance address these issues? And more important, how can we all get involved to help protect and work for this? In July and August, we're going to take a break and switch gears a bit. I have this idea that people don't know what we're doing in Woods and Wetlands, and we have a lot of really dedicated, enthusiastic, passionate folks who are working on all sorts of projects. In July, our very own, okay, help me, his name has slipped my mind.
Do you mean Jay Futterman?
Yes, Jay Fetterman, God bless him, who is a self-determined energy nerd, is going to walk us through how we can each in our own home, room by room, do things to save energy and a few bucks on the side. His title will be Fighting Climate Change from Home, a room by room tour of ways to reduce your household carbon emissions and save money. Other speakers for the rest of the year are being arranged. And I have to say to the members of Cook and of our area, Lake and Northern Cook County, thank you all for all that you do and for being involved. And if you are not a member, it's very easy to sign up. You could go to the website. When you put in your zip code, they will assign you to a group. I think it's time. It's time. If you're not a member, get involved. And we will see you next month. Thank you all.